Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, because we have made a whole bunch of more new discoveries from the playable demo that was at PAX West this weekend. Several content creators have shared their own footage from playing these demos at the event this weekend. We will be posting links to them in the description below for the clips that we'll be sharing throughout this video, but after looking throughout it all, there are several things I've noticed about both the story and the gameplay that are very exciting to me. Some things that you may not have realized that we'll be pointing out today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So as I said, there will be several clips I'll be sharing throughout this video, and the different channels that posted the full versions of these videos will be linked in the description below. But one in particular comes from my friend Bo from Bo Talks Games, one of my favorite Nintendo channels, amazing content, so I definitely recommend you check him out. But he was at PAX West, he got to play this game, and he shared his impressions of the game with actual footage. And something amazing that he inadvertently did was, well, he pressed new game apparently when he went to the demo, and instead of actually starting the demo like most people, he got to see the beginning of the game. And here's where we see something really impressive. From the little bit of obscured footage that he posted, we can see that Link, like in the very first trailer when he's exploring that tomb with his hood, starts off the game. We all sort of expected that this would be the introduction to the game, but now we know for 100%. But here's where things get extremely interesting. The attendant obviously is not going to let Bo play through this experience, so they pause the game and they boot out of it. But in the brief seconds that we see here, we can see in the pause menu that it shows Link's different items, including this sword that's highlighted, and it says can swing sword with Y. So what this confirms to us here, we all suspected it based off the ESRB rating suggesting Link might be playable, but now we know for a fact that in this section here, it is Link, and he can swing the sword with the Y button. In other words, the beginning of the game is playable, and you do play as Link. But there's even more than I noticed from this section. I also caught a glimpse of a difficulty option. So this game has difficulty options. How many? That remains to be seen. It may just be super easy casual mode and normal, but there's at least 2, potentially more. But beyond those surprising discoveries, there's still actually a lot more I noticed from these different demos of Echoes of Wisdom. So from the different trailers and screenshots from the website, we were at a pretty good idea that there was a lock-on option and a jump option. We've seen the crosshairs before, we've seen Zelda doing these different jumps throughout the different platforms, but it's become apparent from the demo that you have some pretty good control of these options. In order to use a lock-on option, you literally have to press ZL, the big left trigger on the controller, and that will allow you to lock onto an enemy. This could be useful when there's multiple enemies on screen to focus in one direction, and also so you can strafe around and avoid different things while aiming your different abilities. And also with the jump button, while we have seen that in Breath and Tears, this is the first time in a top-down Zelda game beyond the use of a special item where we have a normal jump option, and this is going to really facilitate going to different levels of elevation and also a lot more fun platforming, as we saw a little bit of in the most recent trailer. But the demo starts off with Zelda in a dungeon, and she has to escape by avoiding the different knights and not catching their attention. And what's really interesting about this section here is that this may be a bit of a double reference. A reference from Link to the Past because the game does start off in the dungeons of Hyrule Castle, and also a reference to Ocarina of Time because the first time we meet Princess Zelda from Ocarina of Time, it's in the Hyrule Castle courtyard where you have to navigate this maze-like environment, avoiding the different knights and not getting caught. So there are some very cool similarities there. But something new that we learned from this demo that I think will be making a lot of people happy, or at least easing some concerns, is the fact that we have a spin attack or a spin option. You press the R button, and when you do this, you seem to move around with some speed, spinning around, twirling around, but also it causes you to cut grass around you. And some were concerned that with all the grass in the environment, you wouldn't be able to just run around hacking all the grass like most of the Zelda fans tend to enjoy from prior Zelda games. but you still can. Now I will point out that we've already learned that there is a sword option that we get later on into the game, but this is limited. The spin option is something made available very early on, and you can use it to move around with some speed not just on land, but also underwater. So there's some pretty good application there. Now another interesting element about the controls that we learned is how we access the echoes with the D-pad. So we now know with 100% certainty that the D-pad is something to use different abilities for Princess Zelda. We saw in the trailer that it's not only just for the Tri-Rod with the echoes and the bind ability, but also accessing her sword mode or the automatons and something else as well, but we don't know what that fourth option is yet. I think there's a chance it might be the bow though, but we will speak more on that another day. What we learned is that yes, you can go into these different modes by pressing the different directional buttons of the D-pad, but while you're in the mode to use the Tri-Rod with the echoes and such, in order to select the different echoes, instead of tapping on the D-pad to change your playable mode, you hold right on the D-pad where your Tri-Rod is at. It's very similar to how it works in Tears of the Kingdom. Now another surprising element we've learned about the controls is that you can move around the camera. Now obviously for a 3D Zelda game, this isn't that big of a deal, this is the norm. But for the 2D top-down Zeldas, this is a new element. So we can see here in this clip from Game Explain that briefly the control stick is moved and that does move around the camera. So by moving around the right stick, you can look around a little bit more with the environment, and this might be really useful for seeing what's ahead of you so you can plan accordingly. And I also find this interesting because unlike prior top-down Zelda games where you would explore different environments in a grid-like structure box to box to box, now everything's likely going to be fluid, just like it was in Link's Awakening, which they clearly used to expand on with this game. We also get a nice proper look at the map of the world. It's very clear this time around, and we can see some pretty good details. Something I was wondering about is this weird design in the top left. At first I thought it was the compass, then I was thinking maybe it's not, maybe it's some sort of weird structure in the world, and now I'm still not sure. I think I'm leaning towards it just being a very oddly shaped compass. And while I'm still uncertain, at least now we have a much more clear map so we can make some better guesses. Maybe. But something else that was noticed is that yes, you can make marks and highlights on the map like you can in other Zelda games. To close out though, let's dive into some juicy story details. So in the demo, Zelda reaches Impa, and they have a conversation which I think reveals some very interesting things. So essentially we learn that there is an imposter for the King of Hyrule after he falls into the rift that is issuing the command to jail Zelda, and that's likely why we see all these wanted posters all throughout Hyrule from the different trailers and such. Zelda is a criminal according to the imposter King of Hyrule. But Impa even goes as far as to say that the king is now talking about execution, which is something kind of dark that you may not have expected to see in a Zelda game like this given the cutesy style. But yeah, they're talking about straight up murdering Princess Zelda. That's pretty dark. Something else very peculiar that happens during this conversation though, is that it's pointed out that while Tri may exist and Tri created this Tri-Rod and is working with Zelda, Impa cannot see or hear from Tri. But what makes this even more peculiar is that Tri did not know that they would be unseen either. They expected to be visible. So this is news for everyone. Which leads us down the speculation path for what Tri actually is. There have been some theories that Tri is a product of Princess Zelda's own powers. Princess Zelda having the Triforce of Wisdom historically throughout the different Zelda games, in this time of tribulation, when jailed, somehow summoned her innate goddess powers having to do with wisdom, and that's what led to the creation of Tri, and then Tri in turn creates the Tri-Rod. That's a theory, and the fact that others can't see Tri seems to support that. However, later on into the demo, we see that this rift starts consuming more of Hyrule, but right before that happens, Tri talks about how this rift is too much for it to fix, but there is a history of its kind fixing them beforehand throughout time. So there have been others like Tri fixing rifts throughout the history of Hyrule. So does that mean that Tri comes from some sort of tribe that's been fixing rifts throughout history? Or could it be that there have been other occurrences of something like Tri fixing rifts throughout the history of Hyrule? It's still a mystery at this point, but it is very peculiar on what or who Tri exactly is. And I'll close out with one final cool detail here, and that's that shortly after Impa takes on the knights with her cool ninja-like abilities, even though she's just an old lady, we see her turn around and we see the Sheikah symbol on her back. We know this is Impa, we know all Impas have always been Sheikah, so it's not really that much of a surprise, but it's still very cool to see the Sheikah symbol here, and I think it does add just a little bit more credence to the idea that this scene we talked about in the prior trailer may indeed be a reference to the opposing clan to the Sheikah, the Yiga, given the multiple symbols we see of this evil-like enemy or force, that it's red, that they have the red katana, that it seems to share like a dojo-like environment, something that Yigas would be having, and that they are apparently recruiting, just like Yigas like to do in Breath and Tears. So I'm actually rather surprised with how much we have learned from these demos, but is there anything else that you've noticed? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.